and the Italian Cultural Institute that I would like to thank. So just very briefly, why we have chosen this theme. So this year, last year, what we looked at was Italy's role in international relations. We looked at Italy's role in three main realms. The first one was security, then we looked at Italy's place in Europe, and Italy's place in foreign aid and cooperation. And this year, instead, at the time of the application, actually for the LSE Annual Fund, with the rest of the team, we were wondering, so what should be the theme? And we were all back for the Christmas holidays at home. And the latest SVMET's report on the state of southern Italy came out. And there was a bit of media frenzy around it with the op-ed writers such as Galli della Loggia, Scalfari, Roberto Napoletano actually engaging in this debate on the South. And so we were wondering, we were saying, okay, so probably Italy's North-South divide remains still a pivotal issue in contemporary Italy. So what we decided to do was to build these two panels and to invite some distinguished speakers, so both economists, economic historians, but also people with very different backgrounds, such as the speaker that would follow me, Marco Delogu, director of the Italian Cultural Institute. It's quite, in a way, difficult to not make it a political issue about decisions that have been made for southern Italy. So we will try, in a way, to stick to a sort of more comprehensive view, broader view of this. And at the same time, we will also try not to give a stereotypical view of the Italy's North-South divide. We actually had a contest on the poster of the event, so probably everybody associated a very cool car factory with the North. Actually, that picture is from Pomigliano d'Arco. It's the Panda, Fiat Panda factory. So in a way, everybody thinks of the North or the South with some bias, and we will try to debunk some myths today. And you will probably be wondering why the second part of the title, in a European perspective. And we have done so because we would like to use Italy also as a case study for a broader understanding of the rising fractures and the cleavages in Europe, especially in these tragic hours. And also the role that the Mediterranean plays in this. Now, we will try to, there are a lot of questions, and I'm sure you will have a lot of questions for our speakers. But let me just say one very final word. I would like to thank the rest of the team that you see around the room, the Italian Society team. But also, I would like to dedicate this edition of the Italian Forum to Giulia Regeni, the Cambridge PhD student, was murdered roughly 2 months ago. And not just to have empty words about it, I've actually invited one of Giulia's closest friends, also former colleague, Paz from Oxford, and she actually is here also at the end to collect some signatures for a petition to the UK government in order to ensure a full investigation of Giulia Regeni's case. And so therefore you can approach her. I mean, we basically need 10,000 signatures. Right now we are a bit more than 8,000, so any effort, any help actually will make a difference. So without further ado, let me actually yield the floor to the director of the Italian Cultural Institute, Marco Delogu. Well, when I invited him, he said, Angelo, but I'm not going to come for any institutional, some institutional remarks. And I said, yeah, perfect. Actually, that's not what we want to hear. Therefore, I'll just yield the floor to Marco for the next 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to Angelo, and thanks to the Italian Society LSE. And sorry for my Sardinian English, but I immediately understood that the Sardinian community here got good names, so I'm proud of that. And yes, I said to Angelo that I was not going just to say, simple and institutional welcome. Anyway, I represent the Italian Cultural Institute. I started my work as a director in July 2015, but I'm not a diplomat. I just won a competition, and so I have nothing to do with, like the simple diplomats, or like the work of diplomats. And I'm an artist, a photographer, and since I was a kid, I was a little bit annoyed by the North-Sud, because I don't know why, but my father put in a library, in front, just next to my bedroom, a complete collection of a magazine called North-Sud, made by an Italian politician named Francesco Compagna, who was a meridionalist, I don't know how you say, professor of Southern Studies. And so every time I was saying to my dad, why do I have to go to bed and see this bad graphic in front of me? So we'll start with, okay. I'm going to be brief. Angelo said no more than 8 minutes, and I'll try to do it. There are so many migrations all over the world, and I'm just focusing on 4 about Italy. I will start in a funny way. This guy is a friend of mine. He's a writer. His name is Delogu, and he always make fun about the fact that he's born in Naples in 1950, and he said, I was born in the middle of 900 and in the middle of the Mediterranean. But the fact that Harry doesn't look southern at all is because part of his family came from USA, and there was another migration of very few families that from USA, they understood that in 1929 was going to be a big crisis, and so they said, we have plenty of money, we sell everything, and we're going to fly to Naples, and we're going to do a new life in Naples. So there is also a migration in the opposite way, from USA to Naples. And the fact that it's called Harry is an Italian way to say Harry, like H-A-R-R-Y. So, as I studied contemporary history at the University of Rome with some good professors like Paolo Spriano. I remember Alberto Colonna was a great professor, and Rosario Villari, and some of them were a lot interested in the north-south problem. So at one point I decided to go to the Pontina. Angelo suggested another name to describe it, I forgot. So I would say, where people from the north were taken by the government of the fascism, and they tried this march, this big march. Several people tried to drive this march. The Pope, the Romans, but they never succeed. And even the Caetani family who owned all this big march. So there were about 3,300 houses like that. And now there are just 3 that are still the same shape of, they were in the 1930s. These are just portraits of people who really fight for this land. And people, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, many people said, we don't go there because they are all, fascist nostalgic. There was a big lie. No many of them were fascist nostalgic, but they were just great workers. He did more than 40 or 45 years just working this land. And after the Second World War, when he discovered that he's not going to have his land, that he was fighting a lot, he was working a lot, he went to Australia to try another land. And in Australia, they took his passport for 6 years, and so he could send money to the wife to buy the land. I went there in 1994, and I just said I want to do portraits of these people, just the faces, no more. These two brothers, Bruno and Stefano, I took these photographs in 1994 and then I took them back in 2007. Stefano is still the same, as you could see. Bruno is completely changed. The funny fact is they still wear the same mustache and the same shirt. Distance of 13 years. So right now, many of these, they don't work in the land anymore, you know, they're retired and they cause other migration, you know, several people from India, Sikh. She's I said the queen of Pontina. She was a very nice woman, and she described when Mussolini took her on his arm. And the thing that she has back is something called la pertica. It's a 2 by 2 by 2 triangle that you work in the country to fix the pole and, you know, and measure that. And right now it's full of sick people, I mean Indian sick, that they work in a very, very bad condition, usually in greenhouses for 16 hours a day, about 45 degrees and 98% of humidity. When I took this picture, I stayed there just because I could escape whenever I wanted, but you know, they do flowers or they do cows, it depends. There are also another migration, which is a migration of Romanian, you know, Eastern countries people. This is the same problem, you know. I was working on two kinds of migration. One is from north to south, the people from Veneto, Ferrara, you know, in that way the fascist government took them and they have to be a family with at least 6 women in the age of reproduction. If not, it was not going to count them. The second one is the migration after the Second World War, or Sardinian people like me, who went to Malema and, you know, north of Lazio or south of Tuscany to be shepherds, you know, with the ships, because Sardinia was in a big crisis. And there, you know, after the Second World War, there was the same percentage of inhabitants of Sardinia. It was very close because there was the boat from Civitavecchia, and imagine that usually from Civitavecchia to every little village in Sardinia, they went walking with the ships, not with a van or anything else. And this picture is taken in 2007 and seems, you know, like 200 years ago, is a mungitrice, milker machine. They transport to, you know, to places to have the milk every morning and every sunset. So there is a big, well, not in terms of numbers, but in terms of how much they have a role in the community. A big numbers of Sardinian shepherds in Maremma. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. These guys, as you know, it was fun the other day. I saw that Marco Batuano got 6 million euro to lead the team, and this guy bought so many lands in the 60s, where the land in Maremma was very cheap, and now they have a huge property in Capalbio, who is a VIP place, and they have much more money than Marco Batuano. But I said, why don't you sell everything, and you go to New York, or you know, to London or to Rome? And they said, to do what? To drink beer at the bar every day and get drunk. So we like the work, and they stayed there. And I said, but do you have a family, a wife? And I said, no, there are some Romanian. We get sex and it's fine, much better than our life. They are very, very, very rich. Even they don't look like, because they don't. Of course, they don't want to sell. It's their life. This guy lives next to a power station, but the funny thing is that he gets all the radiation, everything, but he doesn't have electricity. So it's another case. And this is the only young guy. that a Sardinian guy was a shepherd, because the younger, the new generation doesn't want to be shepherds, and the point is that the Sardinian doesn't want to sell the sheep to the Romanian or the people from Montenegro, Albania, or all these things. So this is going to be another problem. No more sheep in Italy, because probably 70 or 80% of the sheep belongs to Sardinian shepherds in Italy. So there are some Romanian like this, a couple with just, and they live in a very bad condition, I have to say. And this is another guy. Oh, sorry. And this is just the sunset with ships. The last thing I could say, in '97, I went to spend 3 weeks in the Northeast when Northeast was exploding. Was 0% of unemployment and all these things. But this, because I'm talking with in various prestigious university, I went to talk with the dean of the University of Venezia, and he said, we're going to have a big problem in a few years. And of course the problem is right now, everybody knows the crisis of the Northeast. And he said, nobody wants to come to study anymore. The percentage of population who are coming from the south to study in Venice or in other university in Veneto or Padua is 80–85%. Nobody here wants to study, and because they could get a big work and get like the equivalent of 5,000, 6,000 pounds. So they stop studying and they go to work in this little factory, and there's a big contrast. And so also the education is another problem about migration. And so now what we say, all the classically gentes in Veneto, like professor, is mostly from the south. And how many tensions there are about that is another problem. So sorry if I was a little bit too long, but we stay to do
Thank you. Actually, I'll invite now. Thank you for your work. I think it was really different from the usual institutional address that we get. So we actually thank you for this. If I can ask Professor Guiso and Professor Attanasio to actually join me on. So, first of all, I would like to thank both Professor Luigi Guiso, who is actually acts as Professor of Household Finance and Insurance at the Einaudi Institute for Economics and Finance in Rome. And I would also extend our thanks to Orazio Attanasio, who is professor and currently also head of department in the economics department in UCL, for having accepted our invitation. We'll proceed as follows. We will have 2 presentations. First, Professor Attanasio will start, we'll kick off, and then it will be followed by Professor Guiso's presentation.
Okay. Do I need a microphone, or is this okay? Yeah.
Probably, yeah. Just for the recording.
Okay. This is not a presentation. At least this was not the deal. I will just say a few words. I do not have any slides, so Luigi will put me to shame because he has prepared lots of interesting things. And it is nice to be here. In fact, I did centuries ago a PhD, a master and a PhD at the LSE, so it's nice to come back here. As much as I like to be here, I hesitated a little bit in accepting this invitation, not because I don't like the Italian society or LSE or anything like that, but because partly because of the theme of this discussion, and I try to avoid to talk about things I do not know much about. Of course, I have an opinion. I know a few things about the differences in Italy between North and South, but I don't work on this. And the reason why, so I guess my views and my opinions are not worth more than that of an average, well-informed or partially informed observer, and which is fine, and which is fine to express such opinions. The reason why I try to resist this kind of public expressions of opinions is because, and I guess I said yes here because it's not that formal. I mean, this is not a presentation. I do not have any slides. It's because when you are in the position where I am, I'm a professor of economics and head of all that stuff. The things that you say get invested with an aura of scientificity, and they acquire, or they might presume to have a weight that, in my opinion, should not have. So that's my disclaimer on what I'm going to say. And to partly offset this, I'm going to try to relate some of the things I would say to the research I do and the things that I do know. And then I will have a long list of complaints about how little we know about the same things in Italy. So the differences between North and South, and talking to the organizers, I said, okay, you do research on human capital and the child development and all that, why don't you talk about that? So I looked at the PISA data, 2012 is the latest available results. And Italy does pretty badly in general. So the PISA, for those who don't know, are standardized tests that are taken by students. And the one I'm referring to are taken in mathematics and reading by 15 years old. So Italy is below the OECD average, and that's not great. What is interesting, however, is that if you look at regional distributions of scores in Italy, so the top is Shanghai's top students, and then places like South Korea and Finland, they're all at the top of the scales. And this is done roughly in OECD country and a few other countries. If you look at the regional differences, if you look at students from Trentino, from Veneto, Northeast, they do as well as, actually better than Finland. Not as good as Shanghai, but better than Finland. So they're way up there. If you look at students from Calabria, which is my region, they do worse than Kazakhstan. So they're way down the list. So there are obvious huge differences in performance. And those things matter. Matter because of productivity, matters because of, they have been shown to be at least related, but probably there is some causality there with the performance of an economy, which makes sense. If you have a labor force which is very numerate, you cannot expect to do well as a country. The more interesting question, though, is that where does this come from? If you look at the difference in, say, in consumption or disposable income, they are not as big as the differences in this type of achievements. So where do they come from? And that's where my knowledge stops, in the sense that I do not know much where this does come from. Does it come from the way schools perform? That would be an interesting hypothesis. One thing that I do notice in Italy is that there is a huge resistance to any form of evaluation. I found, there was this really laudable initiative in Orazio, which tried to follow the performance of students as they progress through the system in Italy. And I know actually very well another LSE PhD was the director of the LSE for a number of years, Carlos Esteta, and dedicated a lot of work to that. And my understanding is that that has been criticized a lot in Italy, because it's not right to evaluate students or to evaluate teachers and whatnot, which is really escapes any logic, in my opinion. And moreover, there is an active boycott of this type of test now, so that the most recent are really problematic for sure, there are things like PISA. However, I think and that relates now to my interest, what we do know when, not from Italian data, which is a pity because they don't exist, but from other data, either from the US or from the UK or from developing countries, what we do know is that differences in performance, in cognition, social-emotional skills, language, they start very, very early in life. I worked with data from Bangladesh where you actually measure the cognitive development of children aged 7 months, and you observe significant differences depending on the socioeconomic background of this children at 7 months, really large. And then they start increasing. There are some really nice data from Ecuador, where children aged at age 5, they measured their language development, and there were a huge difference, 2.5 standard deviations for those of you who know political statistics, between those belonging to the top quartile relative to the bottom quartile. If you translate it in terms of years, this is equivalent to a 2.5 years difference, which means that children that go to school at age 5, if they come from the bottom of the distribution, they will have the language competence of a 3 years old or 2.5 years old, relative to the peers that come from better off families. So you put a 3 years old in a school where they teach a curriculum designed for 6 years olds, they will not understand anything. And then delays keep accumulating. Now, obviously, it's an interesting question, where do these differences at age 5 come from? And there are there's strong evidence that might be coming from what parents do at home. There is a famous study by two American sociologists, Hart and Riley. They show that by age 6, children living in poor families in the United States have listened to about 6 million words less than better off children. And if you listen to with one difference, the square words, you get more if you're in a poor family. And so if you listen to few words, you learn much less. Your brain develops less, and then that starts from there. So I think this is a really important issue to track the evolution of cognition, of personality, of individual development, starting at birth and going through till age 6, and then progressing through the school system. And it's very unfortunate that we don't know much, at least. Maybe I don't, but I haven't seen anything coming out of Italy on that, in terms of data collection. Well, if people object to the invalidity, I can't imagine what they will say when they try to measure the cognitive development of a 3 years old. And it's a pity also because, on the other hand, there are lots of really interesting stuff coming out of Italy in terms of interventions. You know, the Reggio Emilia nursery system has become a model in many parts of the world. There is the Milan School of Psychology for family environments and the like that is common practice in many parts of the world. And so there is this difference between number of fancy designs that come out of Italy, and then our understanding of how the society is evolving and how it progresses, which is very problematic in my opinion. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you really want to understand deeply the evolution of the differences between North and South, the difference in economic performance in the frame of the society, guess Luigi will be talking